He sat in the dimly lit penthouse, a glass of expensive wine resting loosely between his fingers. Soft music drifted through the room, blending with quiet laughter that felt more practiced than genuine. Across from him, she smiled, beautiful and effortless, yet somehow distant. Everything about the night was polished, indulgent, and carefully arranged. But beneath it all lingered an emptiness he refused to acknowledge. He leaned back, telling himself he deserved this escape, that the long days and responsibilities justified his absence. His phone vibrated against the table once, then again, its screen lighting up with calls he chose not to see. He silenced it, forcing a smile as if nothing outside this room existed. Hours passed unnoticed until the darkness began to fade, and the first pale light of dawn crept through the curtains. The illusion started to crack, reality pressing quietly at the edges of his thoughts. He stood, adjusting his jacket, preparing to leave without looking back, unaware that this morning would unravel everything he thought he could control and change his life in ways forever. The city was unusually quiet as he drove through the empty streets, the early morning light stretching long shadows across the road ahead. The hum of the engine filled the silence, but it did little to calm the uneasiness creeping into his chest. The confidence he carried just hours ago had begun to dissolve, replaced by a dull, persistent guilt he couldn't quite name. He tightened his grip on the steering wheel, exhaling slowly as he tried to steady his thoughts. He started rehearsing excuses, piecing together half-truths he could offer without raising suspicion. Maybe he had worked late, maybe his phone died, maybe there was an urgent meeting that couldn't wait. Each version sounded convincing in his head, yet none of them felt solid enough to silence the discomfort growing inside him. His phone lay on the passenger seat, the screen still showing missed calls and a message he hadn't opened. He glanced at it briefly before looking away, as if ignoring it could undo whatever it meant. As his house came into view, the silence deepened, pressing heavily around him, as though something was waiting just beyond the door. He parked the car and stepped out, expecting the familiar comfort routine to greet him, but something felt wrong before he even reached the door. The morning was too still, the usual sound of life inside the house completely absent. No faint clatter from the kitchen, no soft footsteps, no distant hum of conversation. Just silence. He unlocked the door and pushed it open slowly, the quiet inside heavier than he anticipated. It didn't feel peaceful. It felt empty, like the house itself had been hollowed out. He stepped inside, instinctively calling out, his voice breaking the stillness, but no answer came. Not from his wife, not from his child. The absence of response unsettled him more than he expected. As he moved further in, small details began to catch his eye. A chair was slightly pulled away from the table, as if someone had left in a hurry. A cup sat on the counter, half full and forgotten. The curtains hung motionless, untouched by the morning breeze. Each step he took felt heavier, and a quiet realization began to settle in. This silence was not normal at all. As he stepped further into the living room, something on the floor caught his attention and made him stop abruptly. A small toy lay near the center of the room, its bright colors standing out against the quiet emptiness. It was the same one he had bought just days ago, a cheerful little figure with soft edges and painted details, chosen after his child had pointed at it with excitement. Seeing it there now felt wrong, almost out of place, like it didn't belong in this silence. He slowly bent down and picked it up, turning it in his hands. The surface was still clean, untouched by the wear of time, a reminder how recently it had been given. In that moment, memories rushed back. His child's laughter, the wide smile, the way small arms had wrapped around him in gratitude. He remembered the promise he had made to always be there, a promise that now echoed painfully in his mind. But something about it didn't make sense. His child never left things behind like this, never abandoned something they loved so carelessly. The realization struck him hard, sending a sharp wave of unease through his chest. This wasn't just a forgotten toy. It felt intentional, like a quiet message left behind, and suddenly, the silence around him no longer felt empty, it felt terrifying. A sudden surge of panic pushed him forward, his quickening as he moved from one room to another, searching for any sign that this emptiness was temporary. He went straight to the bedroom, throwing the door open, only to feel his chest tighten at what he saw. The closet stood half open, rows of clothes missing, Empty hangers swaying slightly as if disturbed not long ago. Drawers had been cleared, their contents gone, leaving behind a hollow, lifeless space. Even the photographs on the dresser were out of place, some missing entirely. Others turned face down as though they no longer belonged. He hurried toward the child's room, his breath uneven now. Inside, the space felt painfully incomplete. Some things were gone, but not everything. A small blanket lay crumpled on the bed, a drawing still taped to the wall, its colors bright and innocent. It looked like a moment frozen in time, as if life had paused halfway through, moving through the rest of the house. He began to see the pattern clearly. Nothing was broken, nothing rushed. This wasn't chaos. It was careful, deliberate, and as the truth settled in, his anxiety deepened. They hadn't simply left, they had chosen to. His search slowed when he noticed a single envelope resting on the table, placed too deliberately to be accidental. His name was written on it in familiar handwriting, steady and composed. For a moment, he just stared at it, a strange hesitation holding him back, as if opening would confirm everything he wasn't ready to face. When he finally reached for it, his hands trembled slightly, the paper feeling heavier than it should as he unfolded it. The words inside were calm, painfully calm. There was no anger, no accusations written in haste. Instead, each line was measured, clear and certain. She told him she knew everything. Not just recently, not by accident. She had known for a long time. She wrote about the night she stayed awake waiting for him, about the silence she endured, and the excuses she pretended to believe for the sake of peace. She described the quiet ways she protected their child, shielding innocent eyes from the truth he thought he had hidden so well. Then she explained why she left, not out of revenge, not to hurt him, but because she could no longer stay without losing herself. She chose dignity, and she chose to protect her child from growing up around broken trust. At the end, she mentioned the toy. Their child had insisted on leaving it behind as a gift for him, a small goodbye he hadn't been there to understand, one that now said everything. The letter slipped slightly in his grasp as the words began to blur, not because he couldn't read them, but because his mind had already drifted somewhere else. Memories surfaced without warning, vivid and painfully clear. He saw his child taking those first unsteady steps toward him, small hands reaching out with trust and excitement, laughter filling the room as he knelt down to catch them. He heard echoes of evenings spent together, simple moments wrapped in warmth, shared meals, quiet jokes, the kind of happiness that never needed to be questioned. He remembered the promises he had made so easily back then, words spoken with certainty. Promises to always be present, to protect, to never let anything come between them. At the time, he believed every one of them. But standing there now, those memories clashed sharply with the silence surrounding him. The man he had been in those moments felt distant, almost unrecognizable. Somewhere along the way, ambition, distraction, and a growing sense of entitlement had pulled him away from what truly mattered. The realization settled heavily in his chest. He hadn't lost them all at once. He had traded something real, something irreplaceable, for something fleeting, and now there was nothing left but the emptiness he created. The full weight of everything crashed into him at once, leaving him standing there, unable to move. It was no longer just about betrayal between two adults. It was deeper than that, heavier. His actions hadn't only broken his wife's trust. They had reached his child, quietly shaping a pain he had never stopped to consider. The thoughts settled in with unbearable clarity, making his chest tighten. The house around him, once filled with warmth and constant life, now felt suffocating. Every corner echoed with absence, every quiet second stretching longer than it should. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It pressed down on him, turning into a punishment he couldn't escape. He fumbled for his phone, quickly dialing, holding it tightly as it rang. Once, twice, then nothing. He tried again and again, sending messages that remained unanswered, each attempt making the reality more final. No response, no acknowledgement, just an endless void. For the first time, there were no excuses left to hide behind, no distractions to soften the truth. He stood there with nothing but the consequences of his choices, and the realization that there was nowhere left to run. Desperation pushed him into action. He called friends, colleagues, anyone who might have seen them or known where they had gone. his voice tight and urgent. He retraced steps in his mind, trying to piece together clues he might have missed, searching for any trace that could lead him back to his family. Every unanswered call, every vague response from someone who claimed not to know, twisted the knife a little deeper. The world seemed closed off, indifferent to his panic, and the realization hit him harder with each passing moment. He might already be too late. Sitting alone, he finally allowed himself to reflect, not just on the mistakes that led him here, but on the kind of man he had become. Ambition, distraction, selfish desires, all had contributed to the distance that now seemed insurmountable. He held the toy in his hands again, its bright colors now heavy with meaning. It was more than plastic. It was a symbol of innocence, trust, and love that he had jeopardized. Redemption might still be possible, he thought, but the cost of earning it, and whether it could ever restore what was lost, was uncertain. He sank into the armchair by the window, the early morning light spilling across the room, casting long shadows over the emptiness around him. In his hands, the toy felt heavier than it had before, its small form carrying the weight of a lesson he could no longer ignore. For the first time, he truly understood what it represented. It wasn't just an object left behind carelessly. It was a deliberate message, a quiet but piercing statement from the one he loved most. He whispered to himself, almost inaudibly, the words he imagined his child might say, "You chose something else over us." The sting of those words cut deeper than anything else, a reminder that the consequences of his choices had been felt far beyond his own experience. Whether he would ever see them again remained unknown. The path forward was uncertain, and no amount of pleading or remorse could guarantee a reunion. Yet in that moment, clarity settled over him. He had changed. He finally understood the depth of what he had lost, and the lesson, though painful, would remain with him forever. Betrayal rarely strikes like a sudden storm. More often, it seeps quietly into the cracks of everyday life, unnoticed until the foundation beneath begins to crumble. Relationships don't end in a single heated moment. They erode slowly, silently, as trust is chipped away by repeated choices and unspoken neglect. The people who love us most feel the impact first, carrying the burden of our mistakes in silence, shielding themselves and others from the pain as long as they can. By the time the consequences finally arrive, the damage may already be irreversible, leaving only the echo of what once was. True success is never measured by wealth, status, or fleeting pleasures. It is measured by loyalty, presence, and the care we show for those who depend on us. Money and indulgence cannot replace the warmth of a shared laugh, the comfort of a hug, or the security of knowing someone will always be there. In his hands, the toy remained, its bright colors and innocent form now heavy with meaning. It was a small, silent witness to choices made and opportunities lost, a lasting symbol of a broken family, a reminder that some mistakes cannot be undone, only learned from.